If I went from a kid who grew up in a French education system and gave presentations in a language I didn't even know, I'm sure anybody in the world can master it. And if I can convince people of that one sentence, Eric, they'll follow up with me. They'll watch the videos. They'll listen to more podcasts like this. They'll join a Toastmasters club that I'm a huge fan of myself. So that's really the key. So going back to the popular topics, I talk a lot about things that are on most people's minds. The fear of public speaking. Where does it come from? How to manage vocal variety and use different emotions to drive different decisions. How do you speak better through less filler words? And obviously, of course, how do you present as an introvert and get your confidence up as well?
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure in telling somebody this is the last presentation you're ever going to get. But it does make you, fine tune it down to what is that one sentence I want to get across. So yeah, I was like, wow, that's scary. It's the last presentation I'm ever going to give, and I have to leave them with something. So.
And that's why you're going to remember that advice the rest of your life, Eric, because I made it that extreme. That's
Well, it is about extreme. That's from a marketing perspective, and often when we're working with companies, it's about fine-tuning their message and getting their people out there to kind of talk about it. And we tell them we don't want anything lukewarm. If it's lukewarm, no one's ever going to remember it. So either make me angry, make me cry, make me mad, something, give me some kind of visceral reaction. If there's no visceral reaction to what we're doing, then we might as well not do it. It just becomes background noise.
Absolutely.
And so talking about, how in today's kind of new world, right? So there's events will come back eventually. We're not sure when, but so that I could see that category being a big one for you, of someone preparing for the big stage or wanting to give a presentation. What are you doing now? What's the advice? Are you working with people on how to present online? What's kind of the category you're seeing sort of emerge as we live through this interesting time?
Absolutely. So the way that I see this, Eric, is that the virtual world and the in-person world is similar, except for a few key differences that I'd love to point out. So the first one is that we cannot gauge the reaction of our audiences. So let's say when we're in person, let's say I'm in Atlanta, I'm giving a workshop to everyone in the company, and I say a joke. Two things are going to happen. One, you're going to look at me and say, Brendan's a funny guy. This was funny. I'm going to start laughing. Or more likely, number two, you're going to look at me and say, this guy's not funny. He really shouldn't be saying any jokes. But either way, I get the real-time feedback from yourself and everyone sitting there and saying, okay, maybe I'm not that funny. Maybe I should adjust the way that I present for next time. But you don't get that feedback in an online presentation. Even in this very conversation we're having right now, and it's just one-to-one, I actually don't know how you're reacting to me because I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at the camera lens. Because if I looked at you, it doesn't look like I'm looking at the camera at all or looking at you directly. But when you have 25 people on a Zoom call, you can't see anybody. So the point and the message I'm driving is the same joke that you said in person in Atlanta. You need to say with the same amount of energy, the same amount of positivity, the same amount of enthusiasm, and assume it's funny. And that is why the online world is a bit more challenging. So what's my advice? My advice is get people you don't like on a Zoom call to give you hardcore feedback, whether it's the audio setup, the hair, the way that you're dressed, the background. Let them critique every part of your presentation until it's perfect. And the second thing is imagine the perfect in-person audience. So when I started podcasting on shows, you can imagine how stressful it is. You're kind of just sitting there like, why is a stranger asking me questions? But after 100 shows, you get really comfortable because the intention that you have when you jump into a presentation is different. Because you say, well, Eric is a very successful business owner. He doesn't need to be making this podcast. He does it to add value to other people.